I'm here with Joan Diamond, and I'm going to ask Joan to introduce herself a little bit, and then we're going to go into this topic of what's possible now. So over to you, Joan.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicki, for this opportunity. And I'm going to start with my bio by starting with today and going backwards. At this point in time, I'm working with, I'm going to say a number because the role changes of organizations that deal with the human predicament. Some people refer to it as the global challenge, others the global problematique. The main one is the Millennium Alliance for Humanity in the Biosphere, which is an initiative started at Stanford University. And our goal there is to get the broadest swath of civil society and provide an opportunity for their voices on this issue. I mean, we have elite members. We have about 3,000 members now. And, you know, some are very famous scientists and we attract famous scientists. But my concern and interest is that we're a place where civil society of all ages who are concerned about what's happening in the world can come together. We work with them on, you know, on blog posts, helping to form communities with issues. So that's called the Mob. It was started by Paul Ehrlich, and that's a primary one. The second one is the Crayons Foresight Analysis Nexus, also known as the FAN, which is a very small organization that was started in Switzerland, and I serve as the executive director there, as well as with the Mob. And its goal is to be providing the science that of the interconnected issues that bring us to this point in history where civilization is threatened and where our values are threatened. So what's the science behind it? A third organization, where fortunately I'm just on the board of, is the Geneva Global Initiative, which is actually a sister of the FAN. And its goal is to work with, look at large-scale catastrophic system collapse, and is very system risk-oriented, and how do you explain this to governments? And work with governments to build more robust. Now that seems so obvious, you know, but a year ago it was still a little, you know, far out there, but now we see the need for that. I also serve on the board of the Institute for Energy in Our Future, which is an organization that houses Nate Hagens. And some of your community will know Nate and his work on the superorganism, but again, tremendous focus on the interconnected issues, particularly the forgotten issues of science, of finance and energy, and with a very strong outreach, at least in the past, to students and bringing his students into this conversation. I also work on the advisory, work isn't the right word, serve on the advisory board for Michael Lerner's Omega Group, which is an emergent funders, thought leaders network, exploring the global challenge and where there are opportunities to build resilience, both spiritual, emotional, personal, and in our society and institutions. So that's what I'm doing now. And that's all been built on a chunk of my career spent with a nonprofit that worked on nuclear security issues, primarily Northeast Asia, with a deep experience with North Korea. And prior to that, I worked in the corporate world in telecommunications and public utilities. We could go back further, but that's certainly not enough for me today. And I am, 372 years old for all of that. In response to your very specific question, which I'm interpreting as being what might we be building? What should we be seeding? What should we be thinking about in terms of the world after COVID-19? And I think of this as that there are really three levels. There's the personal. each of us are having to confront certain things in ourselves in this time of shelter in place and isolation, whatever that word actually means in such a connected world. And I hope that many of us, a critical mass, are taking advantage of this opportunity to sort of see what we're seeing in ourselves. Who is someone today sent me an email, and she sent it with the 2 levels, and she said she's spending so much time on Zoom and she's having to see what other people see when they see her all the time, and it's making her really unhappy because it's not the person she sees when she thinks about who they're seeing. But there's another level to that. What are we seeing in ourselves beyond the sort of New Year's resolution? This is an opportunity where we're being forced to build some new patterns. And are we doing that consciously? Are we looking at or taking advantage of the opportunity to look at those times when we aren't necessarily the person we would like to see in our, in that Zoom lens and deeper? So there's that personal, that I do believe that if there's a critical mass that takes advantage of that and comes out the other side, building it into the more complex lives that we will all have, that they're taking the important pieces of that with them. The second level is community. What are we seeing and experiencing around us? I see on the neighborhood listserv things that I never expected in my community. Whereas in the past, I would say, I can't stand the listserv. They're going to be complaining about the bumps in the roads or the kids doing this and being cranky about someone doing that. That's not the tone of the listserv now. The best in people is coming out. Shirley at 101 Panoramic is out of toilet paper. Shirley's elderly. And, these are ridiculous examples, but hopefully easy to grasp. But seeing that best. So what is that community that we can really build on and discuss? And I know not everyone on the Hill, as we call it, agrees with one another, but there's now a shared experience where we've all had to step up and be our best selves. Can we use that as a new level and a new platform for us to deal with the problems that face us, talk about the issues in our community? And, it's certainly hope that that will be the case. And then we can go out to, local government, but I'm going to say just government systems. Obviously, one of the things we're all aware of, how much our social infrastructure has failed us. People have not failed us. We've seen, some people have, but for the most part, people haven't failed us. We've seen the best in our governor. We've seen, fabulous things in your governor, who was a good man before. We've seen mayors. We've seen, local leaders stepping up, being, helpful and serious. So the people haven't failed us, but the systems aren't there. The systems in the richest country in the world, we have so many people who are, obviously afraid of being able to get tested. What's going to happen if they get sick? What's going to happen if they can't pay their rent? And so I'm hoping, and I don't know where this conversation starts. The first 2 levels I can sort of see where to begin with the planting. But what do we really do with this understanding that at a very fundamental level, the infrastructure of the United States, the focus has to change. We need to pull away from growth. We cannot have a society that takes care of people and is dependent on GDP and quarterly earnings. And that's a very deep value, but I think at the core of many of the problems that we're experiencing in the country now. So I don't have a strategy for you on how to do that, except taking advantage and bringing friends and neighbors into the, many, webinars and opportunities online to explore what's happening in the broader world. But beyond that, I don't see the path at this point, but it's also early. But I do think that that's a definite what we need to be redesigning, planting the seeds for, and being prepared to do differently. We will never go back. I bristle every time I hear the word normal. There is no normal. Even if something was normal 3 months ago, that was 3 months ago. So what is going to be the new world? And recognizing that even people who think we're going back to a business as usual, it won't be business as usual. There will be something new. So obviously the premise of this conversation and your project is to help identify what that new world, what we need to be doing now for a new world that on the other side.
Yeah, or just notice the leverage points, and they could be micro leverage points. Like the thing that you said, our best selves. I think to call what we're doing our best selves together, just even that little motto, to remember, oh, we were our best selves together in that time. So I'm listening for mottos, art, policies, frameworks. I'm listening for how do we name and articulate those seeds. And the other thing I got from what you're saying is we don't want normal, we want stable. And I think that there's a difference between normal and stable. And we all know that normal, there's like a lot of problems. There's increasing number of problems with normal. Growth is good, wealth gap, people falling off the edge, ecological destruction. I mean, the fan that you talk about. I mean, every blade of that fan you talk about, maybe you could talk about it, is mapping the abnormal. And so, maybe it's a question of what do we want to stabilize going forward? And the seeds of stability, because everybody's going to try to define the new normal, and all us like clever people will like have our own way to do it. But what do we see now? Is it that stability will come from human connection? Is it that we're forming basically new churches, new social clubs, new, the bowling alone thing that we're starting to bowl together? So I'm just pulling that out for you to maybe respond to. We froze it up for a second.
There was so much there. It's hard to know. Yeah, so did you for a little bit there.
Right, okay.
It's very interesting because as I understand what you're saying, the challenge is, can we really use this community and this self to do things very differently outside, to have a very different economic system, a very different how busy do we need to be, a very different what is a value to the community, what do we really need in the community, what sort of heroes do we need in the new world that are going to be very different than the heroes in the old world. And I would like to think, though I don't see the path, that the community and the self-awareness, greater self-awareness, can be the seeds for these other things, the very fundamental structure of our society that needs to change, or we will not do better in the next pandemic or disaster or threat to our way of life. So,
and there are many threats, right?
There are many threats. Okay, so there are many threats that are one threat because they work together.
Right.
So if it were just going to be a problem of water, that there are probably ways to solve it, but it's that water is connected to soil, which is connected to how we eat, which is connected to expectations, which is connected to, not in this order, to climate change, which is connected to. So it's this tension between dealing with those issues, and as you said, the blades of the fan, the biogeophysical and the social issues, the governance issues, the equity issues, as well as overpopulation, overconsumption. You've got to work on the individual issues that are causing people to suffer today. Some people like to call those Bandaids, but I don't think so, because those are real human beings who are suffering. And to say we have to just put all of our energy into the big problems so that people sometime in the future don't suffer, that's not a world I can live in. So some people need to work on those things, the pain, the suffering that's happening today. Others need to be working on the integrated, interconnected issues that are causing the underlying problem. And so it may be a society where we really think in that term and people identify which part of that spectrum, they're best equipped to deal with. Making the masks or, dealing with the virus on a larger scale. So.
Right. One of the things you said that struck me is that maybe what we really need to reinforce is that we have a linear problem-solving mind. There's a problem with the water, we're going to deal with the well, or we're going to deal with the, whatever. We don't look at the groundwater. We don't look at what else is upstream. And there's, I think, many of us who are now like thinking about the post-COVID world, if you will, are systems thinkers. And it's almost like that is key. And linear thinking is embedded everywhere, like therapy, coaching, everything, consult, everything is linear. Everything is what is the problem you're bringing and how do we solve that problem, and not how we solve for pattern.
Right. No,
and
that's
so
nice way to describe it.
Yeah, I don't know how we do that, but I think I think that's a key. How does that get taught?
I think it's one way is to look at what are the barriers to it. And there are barriers in our education system from very early ages. I know that we spent a semester year or something in the UK when our daughter was about 13. And she went from school system in California where you took chemistry one year, biology one year, the nice, straight, clean buckets. In the UK, all those subjects were combined in the science each year. And it was a very different way of thinking about science. And of course, put her in it wasn't like it was a difficult adjustment going in, but it was a difficult adjustment coming back to California and not having the depth in one subject that was expected at that age. So there are things in our education system. Universities are notorious for being very siloed. One of the examples that's often used is it's very difficult for new professors, young professors, to get promotion and tenure if they're doing interdisciplinary work. They get rewarded, the system rewards them for the depth in their individual discipline. So, you know, you have to get to a certain level before you get the freedom to really do the cross-functional, cross-discipline work. Of course, the best scientists are always working across all the disciplines, but you've got to get your chops by being deep in your discipline. And you know, that's how, you know, degrees are defined also. And there are other, you know, barriers to system thinking in terms of, you know, just what's, you know, there are a lot out there that I'm not thinking right now, but one of the challenges is what are the barriers to systems thinking and systems work?
Right. And where are they? Like you just showed two places, you know, well, two places within the educational system, but I bet you, you know, it'd be possible to look, anybody could look at their, you know, where they work, their disciplines, their roles in the world. Anybody could look at that and ask, where are the frustrations, and are they barriers to being able to cross over from one thing to the other? Because they have knowledge on both sides, but the system doesn't permit them to bring that knowledge together to create, you know, it's, yeah. I don't want to keep you too long.
I do need to go.
Yeah. So, is there anything that occurs to you now that you'd like to say before we wind up?
No, but I would like to thank you for the opportunity and make a request that if I think of things, which I'm sure I will, you having stirred up my mind now, that it's okay to just email them off.
Please. And maybe we could get back together in a month's time and go like, okay, what do we do now? I mean, the other thought I had was there's probably a dozen at least, and probably there'll be more, that to have a roundtable of all the people I've talked to sometime. And I'm sure that many of you don't know each other because I have so many different buckets of friends.
Sure.
And yeah, just so we continue on this.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you so.
Beginning.
It's a beginning. Yeah. It's like we're the anchors for the new. We're anchoring. You know, I sometimes see it's like, you know, throwing. It's like ballet. You know, you have this thing that we're throwing it over the wall of the normal, and getting a rope to climb on, so that we have deposited on the other side of COVID all of this cool stuff. Yeah, so we'll see, Joan. Thank you so much.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay, ciao.
Bye-bye.